research station. So I participated in Crew 188, which is an ISU crew, an interdisciplinary, international and intercultural team. We have two members of the crew here with us, our commander, Dr. Ryan Kobrick, and our executive officer, Renee Gariffi here, and we also collaborated and had contributions from the other crew members. So what we'd like to respond to, and this presentation is not going to detail very well, so is the scenario of living inside the habitat. And we had gone through an induction to the site, and an introduction to the priorities of the Mars Desert Research Program. Now, this is an ageing facility, but it was explained that the priorities are in order of safety, simulation, science, and then society components, other things like communication and outreach. But one of the challenges that we faced as a crew was the understanding that we're in a hazardous environment situation. We were in an environment that was aging and run down. And we were prompted to respond to a number of situations within the scenario and to begin to report those back to our mission support and our mission director with us there on site. One of the things that, and here's some insights into the upper habitable spaces, was the initial induction to the site to understand our safety exits. So this is one of the major exits for the habitable space that was to be accessed by a standing vertical wooden ladder in the cooking area or the galley area, where it was the highest risk of fire or what have you. So after getting up onto this level, scrambling across in an area where you need to duck down, someone this tall needed to duck down, and you would go out onto this little platform area at the edge here, which you must note says do not stand on. So this platform area was the exit underneath, it was the only point underneath this exit, this ceiling exit. The exit itself had a number of covers on it that needed to be removed in the case of an emergency. In this case, a number of wires, nailed constructions. And the instructions were that if you could get out, that you would use this rope to descend. The rope at the time wasn't anchored. We needed to reconfigure that and anchor that for ourselves as a crew and check it out. So I'm going to do a little demo, if you can try and imagine, as a tall person, what this might be like. I had some advantage being tall because I had reach, but here would be the scenario. So I would be able to get along, crawl along, step out onto the platform that says do not step out onto. I'd be able to remove that bit. I could hang on if I needed to do one-handedly remove that after, of course, the rope has been tied up. And then I could stand up. Now, the height of this exit begins about here. My hands could go through the exit to about here. Now I need to exit to the ceiling. To use a rope that's non-fire retardant rope with no knot at the end to get down the level or the equivalent of 2 stories in an emergency. Now, there are some of us in the crew that might have been able to do the muscle up required for that, but there are certainly other members of the crew who wouldn't be physically able to do that. And we weren't particularly confident that a crew of 6 could use this as an exit. Now, the reason we were thinking about this was because in the induction we were told that it possibly wouldn't work, but that was an option to us. We thought of these kinds of things that might be a little bit more suitable. They're freely available on the market, and these kinds of devices are fire rated, they have anchor points, they have end points, and so on. Perhaps that's a solution for the future. We looked at another alternative, which was to use a porthole window on the first layer, the layer where most of us were sleeping. And there was no sign to indicate an exit and no sign to indicate where we might find any device for that. But we were able to locate this, the emergency descent ladder. And it took 2 crew members 40 minutes to untangle that. That's a metal device that was hidden underneath a coffee table where the DVDs were stored. And we thought, super. So we got it together and we folded it back up like the instructions show, when you, just like that, as if it was brand new and ready to go. And we got excited about, well, now we can leave this for future crews, and this could be a possible exit for them. However, the width of this escape ladder had a maximum capacity of 11 inches, and sadly, this emergency circular portal window was about 11.5 inches. It would never have worked. And there was no additional rope or anchor point to use as an alternative. So our only alternative was actually to use the wooden vertical stairwell back through the main exits down below. Now, all of this may have given us the heebie-jeebies, just a little bit, and this was the safety lock on the emergency portal window. Before I get to the armpit story, the reason that we were conscious of some of these safety concerns was that this particular habitat has enormous big airlock seals, so that we can simulate going through an airlock into a 2-story habitat in the middle of the Utah desert. So it sets up the scenario where you as a crew are huddling in and living together as if you're on a Mars base. So it's fantastic. But in that environment, we noticed on the very first day propane smell, or the smell of propane, and we reported that immediately. And the crew also started to have blood noses, they were vomiting, signs and symptoms of this kind of accumulation of a response, or an allergic response to a build-up of gases. And of course, on the days where we were in simulation and the airlocks were closed, that became stronger and stronger, more and more noticeable. So as a crew, we started having more and more discussions about ventilation, airflow, and emergency exits and procedures. So we started to look around and see what was there and what was possible. We were also starting to notice crew behavioural changes, particularly if we were sleeping in our single cell rooms with the doors shut. This is where the gas was accumulating. So we requested to Mission Control, of course, what we could learn about propane, what we could learn. There is a propane facility there on site. Unfortunately, the historical readings have been in PSI, but a propane gauge is always in percentage. So it was difficult to ascertain, but we could ascertain that there had been, yes, an identifiable leak via the contents gauge, at whatever way it was being read. So the leak was identified, and Mission Control were able to provide us with information about the gas propane and the signs and symptoms that we should be looking for as a crew. We could confirm all of those. Unsurprisingly, I slept in the greenhouse until I was in trouble and told to get back inside. But that was one of my responses to this until the emergency was cleared. So we ended up working with a little detergent bottle to find the source, to try and stop the source, to seal that, to turn off the gas appliances, to try and vent it. We broke simulations several times to try and vent the airlock in order to regain some sense of habitability. We were also instructed not to play around with the water systems, the heating systems and the levels, but we had an impossible situation with our water system where it was either scaldingly hot, as in this case we had a 2-minute shower, so this quick Navy shower ended up in scalding armpits. I didn't dare ask if there was anywhere else that was scalded. And it was either that or completely freezing. So that was kind of an uncomfortable situation. So between us, the crew and I'm sorry you don't have the other slides, but we, rather than take this all to heart, we thought, what can we do as a crew? So we ended up producing a 40-page document to send back to the Mars Society, to the board, to be able to identify all of the hazards, the kind of steps that we had taken to the best of our ability to mitigate those, to identify those, to provide signage, and to also make suggestions and recommendations for the next steps. In addition to those, we also made further recommendations, not only for the technological improvements, but very small things that could be made in terms of signage, in terms of things that we would associate with normal building or habitability standards. And it got to a point where we thought this is actually not a bad idea, that we could put forward the recommendation that in fact there may need to be an ISO written, there may need to be an international standard written for the design and the building and the management of space analog systems here on Earth. We perhaps haven't had to think about that, but in the past we work under all different frameworks across the globe. But as now we're facing a situation where we have more and more facilities constructed around the globe for an exciting future in space, we also need to understand those facilities that are aging and that do need our attention, and we cannot continue to put simulation before safety on Earth if we're going to prepare for space. Thank you.